Good morning. Wanted to start my video off today on a follow-up to a chat the other night on the Prepper X channel in reference to vehicle preps in the winter. And it got me thinking, and I thought, well, I'd share some of my thoughts on that subject. Some of the things we discussed was the supplies in your car and what you should have. Wintertime is definitely among some of our areas, and some of the things that was discussed would be some type of a shovel, either a full-size shovel, a collapsible shovel, a way that you could try to dig out snow around your vehicle, around your tires, or one of the big ones I always try to tell people, around your exhaust pipe. Because if your exhaust pipe's blocked, the fumes can backfill into the car due to the exhaust pipe being blocked. The only reason I know about this is where I work, we actually had a cardiac arrest in a vehicle due to carbon monoxide poisoning. The guy went in the car to get warm, and after a major snowstorm, and they were shoveling around the car, and people were helping them dig it out, and they actually found him like an hour later in cardiac arrest and started CPR, but it was carbon monoxide poisoning. So having a way to dig around the vehicle would be a key thing. Some other things I thought about besides the shovel, an ice scraper, having a brush to be able to brush off your vehicle, because many people nowadays with their vehicles don't always brush off the roof of the vehicle, and the problem is if you have ice or other stuff on the roof of the vehicle, it can actually fly off, hit the vehicle behind you or on the other side of the roadway, and hit their car, smash their window, whatever, and cause physical damage. So being able to clean off your car properly could be another thing. One of the things that I thought about too is, how can I insulate some of the car to limit the cold from escaping? When you still have gas in the car, I understand staying with the vehicle. But how long do you stay with your vehicle once the vehicle runs out of gas is another question you got to ask yourself. Because a lot of people do die from hypothermia from the vehicle, but there's ways to try to keep warm and limit the cold exposure. One would be to use the mats from the vehicle to cover some of the window area. Take your vehicle mats, your floor mats, and cover the windows to limit that size of the area that you're looking at. With the windows, other things would be to try to limit the space, would be maybe, hey, let's take the piece that covers your spare tire in the back and put that behind, near the back area, if it's like a hatchback or whatever, and try to cut down that back part of the car that you may not need that area. So that would be another thing you could do, is take to try to take up some of that space to limit the area that you're trying to keep warm in. Because that would be another thing you could do. Some other things to realize, we talked about blankets and having them available, but realize a wool blanket, sleeping bags, anything like that can come in handy. The silver emergency blankets, a minimum I recommend is one of those silver emergency blankets per riding seat in the vehicle. The biggest thing is you can make a shelter out of it if you had to in the car to try to keep warm. Or if you're outside, could you make some type of a reflector with it to try to reflect heat back towards you? But remember, the wool holds about 80% of your body heat, even when it's wet. So that's considerable if you're out there trying to keep alive until somebody finds you. Another thing to think about is maybe a flat tire in the wintertime. So having a full-size spare or a can of Fix-A-Flat. Full-size spare, you can always change the tire, or if you have AAA, they can come out and change it. Or Fix-A-Flat's temporary fix. I know some people say Fix-A-Flat, blah blah blah. But in an emergency, it'll get you by until you can get to a safe area. Cat litter is another big one, because cat litter you can put under the tires, spread it out, put it under the tires for traction. So that's another thing you can carry if you need it too. We talked about flares. The biggest thing is flares would be to mark where your vehicle is, if it's off the road, whatever. But depending on how far off road you are, you may be able to use that to start a campfire near the vehicle to try to get extra heat if you need it. I would, the biggest thing I wouldn't want to see is somebody taking the flare thinking, well, it would be a heat source, putting it in a can, like a tin can in the car, and trying to do it that way. One, the smell of the flare, the phosphorus side of that flare could cause issues. So I would never recommend it in the vehicle, because believe it or not, we actually did it to show people what will happen, and actually the flare will burn through the tin can. So it could start the car on fire. So you never want to try to do anything like that in the vehicle, because that could be a major issue. But the flares could be used for other things, marking where the vehicle is for safety side. Carrying a empty gas can, so if you run out of gas, maybe you can get gas from somebody. At least here in Pennsylvania now, like if you're on the turnpike and you run out of gas, I think it's 2 gallons they'll give you for free if you would break down with their roadside assistance program. So that's things to think about. If you would run out of gas, you can call and they can send out a vehicle and give you 2 gallons of gas. 2 gallons isn't a lot, but depending on your vehicle, that could go upwards, between 30 and 60 miles or more. Enough to get you to a gas station. Tarps are another thing I keep in my car. The tarps, one, if you're working on your vehicle, because you can kneel on it if you had to, or I could build a shelter if I needed to, outside the vehicle, or expand the vehicle, with trying to limit the airspace of the car. Having good work boots or winter boots in the vehicle, so if you have to do anything outside and you're stuck in a pair of sneakers, or for females, non type boots, or they're wearing like dress shoes, whatever, having a way to be able to move around in the snow. You don't want your feet to get wet. A toe strap's another good idea. Toe straps come in all different sizes and the weight that they can pull, but make sure it's proper for your vehicle. It's like a jack or anything else. You want to make sure that that object will support your vehicle to be pulled. So if your vehicle's, a 9,000-pound vehicle, I would at least probably go to a safety and double that, so I have extra if I'm pulling. By having a toe strap so somebody can pull you out may help. Battery radio, so you can hear what's going on if your vehicle wouldn't be running. Lighting, having headlamps or flashlights in the vehicle, so you have some type of lighting. Because that can be very important too, because if it's dark and you have kids or anything else in the vehicle, you want to have something that you can use so that people know you're in that car. Another thing is having some form of food, be it like the food bars, like your Cliff bars, fruit bars, some type of food that's easy. You don't always have to cook. Trail mix, beef jerky, Slim Jim, something like that, so you're getting your nutritional value. But also realize you could have other things in your vehicle. MREs come with the heater, some of them. You could use that. Or if you don't have that, canned goods, you can set it, on the motor of the car. It may be enough to heat that can that it's not cold, and you could eat it that way. So that's other things to think about. Cell phone charger, so you're able to charge your phone, or have plug it into the cigarette lighter plug or the accessory plug, or if you don't have that, having a battery bank, or one of those battery power banks that you can charge your phone would be another thing to think about. If you take any meds, having a medication that you would need with you, or a first aid kit. So if something starts happening, you would have certain meds with you. A knife. A knife can be used for all different types of things. One, to defend yourself, or having a way to cut something. If you're around trees and stuff, maybe break off some firewood, or cut some firewood or kindling to be able to start a fire. I know it sounds stupid, but in a survival situation, you may be able to build a campfire near the vehicle to try to keep warm too. Things to think about. Having matches, a lighter, are also important. One of the other things they recommend is, if you start getting low on gas, is you run it for 10 minutes every hour. You'll still somewhat keep a little bit warm. Maybe not as good as letting it constantly run, but it would sort of keep you somewhat warm. Some other things you could do is, if you have bags or paper in the vehicle, you could take that and maybe stuff it in your clothes to try to add some insulation value, so that you don't wind up being frozen. Having a good quality first aid kit in the vehicle. You'd be surprised what you have and may be able to work. Hand warmers, trash bags. You can make the trash bags into like a sleeping bag. Take your emergency blanket, put it inside of that, so it's like a double layered system. And then you can also take your hand warmers and stuff it in the bag, and then in the bottom of the bag, and maybe it would be enough to heat up that area where your feet are, or half your body, and try to keep it warm. It's just your imagination is what you got to use, And if you're going to abandon your vehicle, what supplies would you take with you to be able to survive outside the car? Because that's a big thing. And mark which way you went, so people are able to follow or try to look for you. Leave a note with the vehicle, whatever. But that's things you got to think about in a situation where your vehicle breaks down. Some other things people don't think about is, do you even know where you're at? Do you know which way you're going? Are you going towards the population, or are you going away from population? So that's things you got to think about. Do you have a GPS? Do you have your cell phone? All important things to think about when that time comes. Another thing I try to tell people is, people say about having water in the vehicle, which is awesome. Some things you can do is get a small cooler, put some of the bottled water in there with a towel, so if the bottles would break from the cold air, the water is still kept in the cooler and not leaking all over your car. So that's another thing you may be able to do for hydration. Having a way to heat that water so that you can make tea or something like that to keep warm is another thing I would look at. With that being said, you want to watch your caffeine type products, because that may make it worse. That's why in my bags I keep like the chicken broth, bouillon cubes, stuff like that, so that I don't get issues of getting dehydrated in that situation. That's all things you got to think about. some other things I thought about was if I had a jack, could lift my car, maybe having wood, like plywood, heavy or thicker plywood type stuff, and then like if you were in the sand, you could jack up that vehicle. So you would need a total of 5 type pieces, at least an 8 by 11 area, maybe a little bigger, that you could jack the car up, one for the jack, and then the 4 others would go under the tires. But you could jack the car up, put the vehicle down on those wood planks, and it may be enough that you can pull out and get the vehicle unstuck, especially with like ice and stuff. Will it work? I don't know. It's just food for thought. I'm sure some people agree, some people may not, but it's things you got to think about on how to get yourself out. Having other methods. If you have a come along or winch on your vehicle, being able to pull yourself out may happen. And one is paying attention to the weather. Being educated about storms and stuff. Do you have proper tires on the vehicle? Depending on where you live. Like if you go out in the west, out like Montana, some of their roads will say right on it, if you don't have chains, you're not supposed to be on that road. And that's regular vehicles, not big trucks. That's just regular vehicles. So that may help, So it's all things we need to think about when we're out there traveling, And then do you have activities for your kids to do? Do they have something to do when you're in the car? Don't mind me drinking my coffee. It's early here, but I try to tell people that's things you got to think about, activities for your kids. And could they have a dual purpose? Some of that activity stuff. Could it be a coloring book where you could use the paper as a fire starter? Could the crayons be used as a fire starter? Out of your first aid kit, can some of that be used as tinder or a fire starter? Does it have iodine? Does it have alcohol preps? If you have enough, could you use one to try to start a fire? Some other things I've thought about is, if you're in your car and the car is running, as they were discussing the other night on the Prepper X channel, Prepper X said make sure you crack the window to allow the air exchange too. You don't want to seal the car tight because that could be carbon monoxide coming in. So all that type of stuff you got to consider when you're out there. And another big one is your vehicle properly maintained, so it doesn't break down, because it can be very lonely when you're on a dark stretch of highway waiting for help. Because you don't have the normal stuff you would have. And this is only in good times. If this is an end of the world situation, what's your plan? What are you going to do next? So I highly recommend everybody have a plan out there. What's your communications plan? Who are you going to call? How are you going to help? Can they get to you or not? The last snowstorm here in Pennsylvania, we had people stranded on Interstate 78 for 9 hours because of the weather. And I tell people, a lot of that's caused by vehicles that don't belong on the roadway. People aren't educated because the weatherman said 1 to 2 inches of snow. After doing some of my weather search, I warned my people in my area. We were calling 3 to 5 in the lower elevations with 6 to 10 in the higher elevations, and with sleet, freezing rain, and everything else mixed in. And I was pretty much on with what our thoughts were. But weather is no guarantee. It's like flipping a coin. you don't know what it's going to totally do. So that's things to think about when you're out there. Don't know what other videos I'm going to try to shoot today. I may try to shoot my first aid stuff over again. But if you have questions, feel free to ask. This is something I'm starting to try to do to prepare more and more people to be ready for a disaster. This isn't the only group I do stuff with. I also do some other stuff on Facebook with another group. And they asked me to help them about doing some of the first aid stuff. So you might see some more videos on first aid coming out. Because my rule is I want to try to educate as many people as we can, so if something happens, people are prepared. Because if we're prepared, we're not scared, we're able to do muscle memory, we're trained, we're educated, and a higher survivability. When something bad happens and we're not able to do our job, people die. I mean, no matter what, people may die, but if we're educated, have the equipment, we may limit that chance of that happening. So, for now, today's Friday, 30th of November, and it's about 8:48 a.m. Hopefully everybody will have a awesome day. Be safe, and until later, this is Rescue Boss signing off.